So I have a question from Andrew. Um, he asks, so Charlie, when do you plan the 90-day quarter, the month, and the week? Um, so Andrew, I'm taking it. Okay, so I've got Arden that's asking about the jumpstarter form. So I'll pull that up. Arden, I see your question there. Andrew, I'm going to start with the unsatisfying answer of it depends on your own schedule, right? But I'll do better than that. The way our planners are designed is really so that when the quarter sort of refreshes, you have a prompt to do the next quarter's planning. I typically encourage people to like have the trigger to actually be about a week before the quarter starts, so that you have enough time to roll into the quarter with the plan in hand. Same thing for the monthly planning. I like doing those the weekend before the month, the full weekend before the month starts. And the week, I like to do those. I actually do most of my planning, y'all, on Sunday afternoon. So in case you ever heard of Schmonday, right? I actually find it's best for me to sit down Sunday evening and think about the week and what I want the week to look like. Because by the time Monday morning starts, I can be really spotty about that. So that's when I tend to do it. So the Sunday before on the week, you'll notice a trend here, right? When I talked about the 10-15 split, everything is before it actually happens. And I know that sounds obvious, but a lot of times when you wake up, it's the start of the month, you're like, what am I doing this month? You can feel behind already. At least, that's how I feel. And that's how people I talk to feel. It's like you're already behind. And then there go the stories, right? And so what I much rather do, and see, it's kind of dark here. So let me switch this real quick. That might be better. Let's do it this way too. There we go. That's a little warmer. Okay, so I like as best as possible to plan a little bit ahead, but not so far ahead that by the time you roll into the plan, it's all gone sideways and you have to redo it again. So this is also why I think, here's what I'll say about this. The exception is for planning the year. Now, you'll see me talk about this again in the first quarter of the year. What we do at the beginning of the year, what a lot of people do, I can't say Andrew does this, and I can't say Shannon does this, but I know a lot of people do this, is, end of the year, beginning of the year, New Year's, we make all these huge plans, huge resolutions and things like that. There may or may not be champagne involved. There may or may not be partying involved, but we make all those plans in, we write them down, and then we stick them somewhere. Well, maybe most people don't stick them somewhere. That's probably part of the problem. But by the time February comes, those resolutions seem pretty far in the past, or we're starting to tell stories. So when it comes to annual planning, I actually recommend that people make some tentative plan. That people make some tentative plans, and then around February, that they review those plans and give themselves a do-over. And so Andrew says, why not just stick to quarters and the heck with the annual plan? I think the annual plan actually gives you a really good vision of the year. I think we think bigger during that period of time, and really the art. And I'll say this to a lot of my entrepreneurial clients, or in a lot of my executive clients, right? The trick is this middle term. The trick is making quarters roll into the next quarter, right? And so that is where it happens. And I've seen people who use, the sort of the 12-week year, just roll from 90 to 90. They lose track of really where that's going. So Andrew, what I would say is probably a middle ground is anything at like the annual level is very tentative anyways, because most of us don't have headlights that go out that far. And so every 90 days, review your annual plan to see how close it was, and lift and shift as needed. But you still have that bigger roadmap to look at, right? you know, even if you're able to go from Nebraska to Denver, you still know that you're in the United States and you're trying to go towards, you know, California, and you know what's around you. And so that's why I think the importance is of the annual plan. But again, at that level, we're talking about visioning more so than we're talking about for real planning. So yeah, so that's what Andrew was saying. But what I'm hearing is the annual plan is not too detailed. Yes, the annual plan is not too detailed. There's different levels here. I think I've written a post about this. I think I've drafted it, but I haven't published it yet. But really at the annual level, for a lot of us, that's the level of visioning, but it's not necessarily at the level of planning and road mapping. And I think that's part of the challenge that people get into, is that it's just putting bigger stakes in the ground and shaping the year. So Andrew, I might answer some more questions about that. I'm looking around because it's either on a note card or it's in a doc somewhere, which is unfortunate because it would have been good to have today. Anyway, I'm going to answer some other questions real quick. Let's see. I'm going to pick up Arden. So let me pull up the productivity jump starter, because that's what she asked me to explain. And she's like, absolutely, I'm going to ask all the questions, and I appreciate that, Arden. I really do. So let me go ahead and pull it up because I was not prepared to talk about it. Okay. Arden, what I'm going to do is just sort of show it, and then see if you have any questions. If you have questions, I might pull you on, but you might not have questions after I explain it. So let me share my screen. Of course, I have to tell you that I got to share my screen. Okay. Shannon, you're seeing my screen, right?
I am.
Great. It's just when I go full screen that I can't see anything. So productivity jump starter. Here's the job to be done for the productivity jump starter. So there you are. You're like, I need to get something done, but I don't know what's going on, and I'm confused. And what just happened? Okay. Productivity jump starter's one job is to get you from sort of that scattered rolling around, like not knowing what to do, to getting something actual productive done. So it's kind of like a game. What are your goals? What really are you trying to get done today? What's super important? Okay, so that's a goal. And the action, what action is there that can support what you're doing? So I happen to know that Arden is a property manager. And so she might be like, I need to call, well, I'm using the action word in advance. So it'd probably be like, the tenant in 113 is having a problem. I need to fix it, right? So the action would be to call the plumber, or to fill out the form, or to email them, or to something. And so these action words here are just meant to have you think in terms of that next thing that you need to do. So whenever you have a loose idea, and you don't know what to do with it, pro tip here is always find the verb that gets you moving. Like if you start an action item with the verb, you automatically start thinking in terms of what needs to be done. So whenever you have something like tenant in 113 has a problem, well, that doesn't help you figure out what to do, right? Your goal is to fix the problem, right? So you can see how I can't not start it with the verb. But the action would be like, what's the next step that you can take? So you list 3 things here, you go do them, and then you take a break. And if you need to come back, then you do that, and then you call it a day. Now, it depends on what these are. You might not be able to call it a day after 2 runs, but the whole idea is once you get going, it's easier to keep being productive. But when you're in that sort of, I'm not sure what to do, so on and so forth, then it's super hard to get going. So that's what the productivity jumpstarter does. It's got the little lines here because, I imagine that people can cut them. You don't need the whole thing. Think of it as a very structured note card that you could write something down on and get things going. Okay. So Arden, did that answer the question for you, or did that work for you? Let me pull that back up. I'm not seeing whether it did or did not work for her, but she's not throwing tomatoes at me. So, okay. So Ken Tuttle asked, when do you do your planning for the next month? By what day of the month? Current month. Thanks. Kenna may have answered that in a previous in Andrew's question, but what I'll say there is I highly encourage people to do this the weekend before the month starts. And so, for instance, this month, and you guys, you're either annoyed by the fact that the week start on Monday, or you really appreciate that our calendar's day starts on Mondays. But I can't do the Sunday start of the week thing. So, for instance, this month it would be. I would encourage people to do the planning on the 29th and the 30th. For the following month, it would be on the 27th, 28th, and 29th. For December, or excuse me, that was for September planning for October, to be more clear. That would be on probably the 29th and 30th. For October, planning for November, it would be, make sure I'm looking at the right month, because apparently Apple changed this on me. It would be the 27th, 28th, and 29th for the following month. And for November, planning for December, it would be, that one's a tricky one. That one's super tricky. I would probably encourage people to do it on the 25th and 26th, or the 24th, 25th, and 26th. But given that December 1st is Friday, I'd say you'd probably be fine to start that weekend. So, Ken, does that help? Okay, so Ken said yes. Thanks. So I have Julie, who asked the question, and then we'll probably start switching into for real application. So if you know that you are the person, or one of the two people who want me to walk through your how to use it in your actual context, I want you to be thinking about that, because I'm going to ask here in a minute, but I'm going to prime you first. So Julie Copeland, or Julie asked, she said she's new to the system. I'm the only employee of an org, so responsible for all the things. My heart goes out to you. Do you feel the system works well for chunking parts of my job rather than writing a book, this year's projects, so on and so forth? I think it feels good to so what I will say is it does work for chunking the discrete parts of your job. What it doesn't do so well about, well, that's not quite true. All right, so Julie, think in terms of this way. Hopefully you'll track what I'm saying here. Your job is split between projects and routines. There's some routines that you just do over and over and over again. So you open the store, for instance. I'm not saying you open the store, but we can think about it. You open the store, you close the door. You do a shift change. Those are routines that happen over and over again. Okay. Then on the other hand, you have projects, which are things that you start and you finish. Okay. So I think that when it comes to really supporting routines, and planners are less good at that, right? That's where I would highly recommend you have a tool like Asana, or you have a whiteboard, or you have something like that that's just tracking your routines. And you walk in the day, you're like, it's Monday, I'm going to do what I do on Monday because it's that Monday's routine. And it doesn't necessarily go on your list. But what you do is, if you know that you have a lot of routines that are going to eat up a bunch of your time, then you give yourself fewer project slots, right? So you notice that we have 5 sort of daily on the daily momentum planner, we have 5 slots for a project. If you know that you're going to spend half your day doing routines, then you do one of 2 things, depending upon what best supports you, right? One thing that you could do would be to make sure that you don't write 5 different projects that you're going to do, because you're not going to get them done in those routines. The other thing that you can do is take 2 of those slots and put in Monday routines, so that you have that spot in there, and that you don't do the thing where you assume you have white space and therefore you use it. So I think it works best in those cases. And Julie, that one of the very opinionated parts of the design here is that the projects that it's those point-to-point projects, especially those I set quadrant 2 earlier, which is not helpful. So those are the important but not urgent projects. Those are the ones that are going to make the biggest difference for your career and the biggest difference to your job performance. More often than not, when I work with entrepreneurs and we'll work with my executive clients, they're frustrated, not because all the routines are getting done. Like they're like, oh yeah, all the routines are getting done, but they're not getting this project done. So you have to carve out and make more room for the projects than you do sometimes for the routines. And it's balancing both, especially when you're the only employee in the company. So I think it works well for chunking down those projects because fundraising is not a project. Recruitment is not a project. Hiring an additional employee or hiring an additional administrative assistant, that's a project. Completing training for newly hired administrative assistant, that's a project. And as soon as it's a project, you can start breaking it down. Julie, I'm actually going to see if you can come on though to see if that helped. Let me find you real quick. So Shannon, let's pull Julie on real quick.
Do I have to promote her to a panelist?
You do.
All right. Give me just a minute.
Hold, please. So Julie, you might have to unmute yourself. And if you feel comfortable sharing your video, I would love to see you. But if you don't feel comfortable, that's okay too.
Well, hold on. Oh, it says I can't start my video, but so that's fine.
That's fine. Okay. Maybe another time.
Sure.
Did that answer the question?
Yes, absolutely. But also, like, so fundraising, I have to raise $60,000 a year for my organization, right?
Yeah.
That's a project, I think.
No, that's not a project. That's a goal.
You don't think? Okay.
No. What are the campaigns that you use to do that are the projects.
Okay. Got it.
Does that help at least?
Yes, because there are there are fundraisers that will happen, right? So is a fundraiser a project?
Right. A campaign, it's the question that you got to ask is this something I can start and finish?
Okay.
Right. And so the routine reach outs to your donors and those types of things, those are actual routines, right?
Okay. Gotcha.
And so routines that end up becoming tasks.
Okay.
But when it comes time to, I've got to plan this event that's a fundraiser.
Right.
That is an actual project, and that's where you can put it on there. So again, what you're saying is that bigger goal, if you go back to sort of what I was saying about the pyramid, raising $60,000, that's the goal.
Okay.
The quarterly objectives or maybe the monthly objectives are the different campaigns that you're going to run to do those things.
Okay.
And then, if you're doing a huge gala or something like that, and from experience that's probably going to take you 3 months to do.
Right.
That becomes the sort of quarterly objective that goes with that.
Okay.
And then you can start thinking, okay, what needs to happen in the months of that quarter to make that happen?
Right.
And you just continue to walk backwards from that.
Okay. But then you're also saying like that thank you notes to donors isn't that project. That's just a routine. And I got to chunk my daily, the stuff I do on a weekly basis anyway, whether it's fundraising, recruitment, or training is not. Yep. Got it.
Yeah. Now, what I would say is, let's pretend about this gala that I'm talking about, right? You might not have a gala, but like if people show up and you're going to send everyone that goes to that gala a thank you card, that's actually part of that project.
Okay.
Right. But if, there's a benefactor that walks in, hands you a check and everybody's super excited, high fives, all those types of things, sending that person a thank you card is not really a project. It's more like a routine thing that you would do.
Okay. And I think that's where I'm getting confused is like, I have like this daily to-do list, right? That's like 700 things and it falls into 16 different buckets. Yeah. And trying to get the buckets separated And I just do them as they come up also, right?
Yeah.
Which I hope I'm not the only person in the world that does that.
No, you're not the only person in the world that does that, indeed. But I mean, so what you'd be looking at, what I would be encouraging on that one is like there are some of these sort of like future building projects that if you don't like fight for them, they'll continue to slide. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so those are the ones that the planners are particularly good at helping you carve in and saying, no, I really have to call this event space on Tuesday this week because I don't want it to be the day before or 2 days before like the event. And then I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to call them. And then you're sort of scrambling, right?
Right. And can I ask one more thing?
Please do.
What is your, so as just getting started, right? How much time do you think, or should I just plan to spend time jumping into this?
Yeah, you got to make time to make time.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the unfortunate answer. Where I notice a lot of people get the most momentum is starting with the monthly.
Okay.
So that they can start to shape the month and get their arms around it, because that's about as far as some of us can see anyways, right?
Okay. Yep.
And then so don't necessarily jump to the quarterly, don't necessarily jump to the annual. Just get your arms wrapped around like getting your month organized and clear, and then the weeks that within that month, you use it for a couple of weeks, update, so on and so forth. And then once you feel comfortable with that, then start having a broader view.
Got it. Great.
And so I also, I don't know the arrangements that you have with your boss and things like that, but if you can steal time away from work, like at a coffee shop, just to do that, I would highly recommend you do that to separate it from just showing up and like, there you are into the fray, you know?
Right.
Just have a special place that you do that. And it might be your kitchen table. It might be a kitchen. It might be, he might be a coffee shop, but not your desk, as it were, because then you're fighting an uphill battle, or many people fight an uphill battle. And so,
okay, great.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks for joining me, and thanks for the great question. So, if you have any others, you know where to reach me. All right, so Shannon, we're going to need to. There you go. You're all over it. Okay.
Charlie, did you see Brian's question in the chat?
I did. The short answer is yes. So the question is, are you planning to create a SAS for your planners as opposed to PDFs? We are currently reviewing what that would look like. So I'm not saying I'm in the planning stage yet, but there are some things we're working out, and I'm very opinionated about what it has to do. And so that's what the conversation was about yesterday. So I wouldn't say to plan on it yet. It's just things that we're thinking about, because we're thinking, how can we make these even better? And to be honest, Brian, I'm torn, because more and more studies are showing that we think better using tangible paper tools. And one of the reasons it really works for people, especially when they're starting to do their monthly plan more than any of the others, is that they're able to do like just what I told Julie, which is to carve some different thinking space and going and doing this type of work. And so I don't want to create something that actually makes it harder for you to do the executive decision making and planning work that the planners help you do. So that's all of that. So let me go ahead and clean up some of these so that I know. Let's see, I've answered Julie's. Answered that one. Ken, thanks for the questions and the feedback there. Cleaning some things up real quick. I'm going to go ahead and bring. Let me read your question, Art. I might go ahead and pull you on here in a second. I'm thinking that. Okay, so what she's saying is she's thinking that I do an individual project planner and using the daily monthly for one subject, which means I will have about 10 different things, which would be great, totally crazy. That's what she said. I didn't say that totally crazy. Arden said that. So she asked, how do I put separate projects, clearing out the garages to prep for construction starting on Monday, are and submitting artwork online to enter shows and writing something on the book, Nancy Girl, make plans to travel by camera and so forth into one daily. So Arden, unless you are strongly opposed, and unless someone else has a question, I think this is a great actual application one to pull you on to show how we're going to do this. I don't see any other major questions. So Shannon, let's go ahead and pull Arden on. All right, Arden, so you're probably going to need to unmute yourself. So you're unmuted. I can't hear you yet. We might be having technical issues, Arden. So that may be a no-go. Darn. We'll give her another minute or two to see if it's her system. Okay, so I'm thinking there's going to be some technical problems there. So unfortunately, we won't be able to walk through, which is a bummer. So Arden, we'll leave you on as a panelist just in case you do figure it out, and then we'll kind of have you in the queue there. What I would say on this one, and to answer your questions, how do I put separate projects, i.e. cleaning out the garages to prep for construction, starting them and submitting artwork to online to enter shows into one planner? When it comes to that, it's fantastic for you to use the individual project planner, which Shannon will link to in the chat for folks who want to see what I'm talking about there. Or actually, I can go ahead and download that real quick. It's always better to show than to tell, right? Especially when you've got something you can show. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Let me move this chat window out of the way. So individual project planner. The jobs to be done for this one is what it says on the tin, right? Is it helps you plan individual projects. And so this is a great tool. It's much like the action item catcher, right? If you don't already have Asana or project management tool or to-do list, manager, this is what this does for you. So you can put the project, all these different types of things. And then you put the actual task, deadline, start date, estimated time, actual time. All right, pretty easy. It is really a good practice to, like, when you're sitting and thinking about a project and scoping it out, to have something like this that's for that particular project. So that when it's time to do your weekly plan or your daily plan, you don't have to put necessarily all of the tasks from the IPP onto your momentum planners. You can just say, work on this project, right? Work on, in her case, I'll say the construction project. Then she can pull this up, and her construction project, like, this is her task list runner for that, and she can just work on the task related to those. Pretty easy. If you don't want to do this and you got a much simpler project, this is great for projects that have a lot of things. If it's like a 4 or 5 step project, then you can just put that task on there. So that's how you can use those. And it makes sense that you would have different project planners for different projects because they're different projects, right? Easy done. On your planner itself, your planner becomes the dashboard that helps you see what those projects are and how you're stacking them up. And it sounds like, Arden, you're going to have some real trade-offs because you've got quite a few projects that you're holding on to. And so you might see, especially if you really lean into the constraints, that you can't do 7 of the projects at once. You just really need to focus on getting some out the door. Like, what I want you to think about is, I'm thinking about if I'm going to use the shoe example, because Angela hates when I use this one, but think about it as if, like, it's one in, one out sort of scenario when it comes to projects, right? If you're already super busy, think about this, guys. I know it's going to be simple when I say it, but you just got to bear with me. If you're already at your peak of what you can do, The only way you're going to be able to do something else is to either drop something that you're doing. So it's the 4 Ds: drop, defer, delegate, or do. Drop, defer, delegate, or do. I did not come up with that. I believe David Allen came up with that. It's the first place I saw it. So he gets credit, getting things done. Good book, right? That's the only real way you're going to be able to add something new to your plate, because you're already full. Well, that's not true. You'll be able to add something else that, another wish, another aspiration there, but you're not actually going to get that work done. So that's why I keep coming back to the 5 things thing. You got to get it done so that you can add something else, right? So drop, delegate, what is it? Defer, drop, delegate, or do. Defer, drop, delegate, or do. Those are really the only paths forward. So if you find yourself in that position where you got way too much to do, and I'm not getting any progress, I'm not going to be able to get it done, and you're thinking about adding something else, drop, defer, delegate, or do.